whether or not you believe in Christianity, whether or not you're a Christian, it doesn't matter. It is true that people who espouse violence suffer in the end. They do. I have seen it a lot. And I grew up in a world that espoused violence. That's what the U.S. government does. My dad was involved in it. And I just believe that. And maybe you don't believe that. That's fine. That is my core belief. I sincerely think that. But why the hate towards someone who's just like, hey, I'm hard. If you think, and I said this to an Israeli official, if you think I'm anti-Israel, man, you have lost the plot, son. If you think I'm your enemy, not at all. I like Israel. Are you kidding? I've spent a lot of time there. I continue to like it. I pray that Jerusalem is not damaged. I feel so sad for the Israelis who've been killed in the last couple of days and the Iranians who've been killed in the last couple of days who had nothing to do with any of this. But the point is, if you think that saying, hey, let's focus on my country where I was born, where my family's been for hundreds of years, that was the promise of the last election, please do it. If you think that's hate, you've really lost perspective, I guess is what I would say. But they do think it's hate, and what's happened is what I knew would happen, which is just like, attacks I don't want to deal with that are affecting personal friendships that I care about.
And it's interesting because I did ask Tucker, I said, well, are you okay with nuclear weapons being in the hands of Iran? And he sort of didn't like that. He didn't want to really, but he sort of didn't like that. And I said, well, if it's okay with you, then you and I do have a difference. But it's really not okay with him. Therefore, you may have to fight, and maybe it'll end, very quickly. But there's no way that you can allow, whether you have to fight or not, you can allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon because the entire world will blow up. Not going to let that happen.
But Matt, Iran has kicked out IAEA inspectors. There could be portions of their nuclear program that are secret. A nuclear secret in the Middle East. How about it? If the world is interested in a secret nuclear program in the Middle East, there is a country that won't allow any international inspectors. Israel. Israel has a nuclear weapon. Did you know that? I do. They allow no inspections. They are fully secretive and clandestine about it, and the Americans are fully aware. You know what? I don't even blame Israel for this. If they want to develop a nuclear weapon, if they had the blessing to do so secretly, I'm not in judgment of that. But to drag the world into a regime change war over secret nuclear weapons, when you have secret nuclear weapons, is a bit hypocritical. So here's the deal. How about Iran and Israel both give up their secret nuclear weapon programs? If Trump got that deal, he wouldn't only get the Nobel Peace Prize, they'd probably name it the Trump Peace Prize forevermore. And it's not that crazy to think about Israel denuclearizing.
Howdy. Good evening, everyone. It's Thursday, June 19th. This is episode 39 of The Whiners. Gosh, I'm feeling old. I'm almost 40. And I'm Ryan in Texas, and we have Jeff in North Carolina. Morgan, I want to say South Carolina.
You would be wrong.
North Carolina also.
You can say it, but you would be wrong.
I really wanted to say, okay, anyway. And then our dear friend.
You're the oddball one here.
I know. Ray, are you also in North Carolina?
I am. I wouldn't go near South Carolina.
Yes. I've driven through it, and I totally get what you're talking about.
No, it's not the people; it's the senator.
Yes, I know exactly.
Say that
what
about a
you
lot of states, right? But maybe
South
Lindsay in
Carolina,
particular?
especially. Yeah.
Yeah.
Our friend Scott calls him the perfume princess. I love that. Happy
It's terrible.
Juneteenth, everybody. That it's to commemorate the abolition of slavery, and that's one of the most important episodes in our country, the ending of slavery. So let's drink to freedom, shall we?
Absolutely.
It sure is.
And Ryan, I bet everybody's wondering, how does a white supremacist celebrate Juneteenth?
I don't know. I'm a Mexican guy.
Oh, all right.
I have no clue. So,
Well, I'm celebrating, but look at the price of this. This is way more than the cost of wine usually for me. But do you know why?
you used my credit card.
No, you're not far from the truth. It was a gift from our favorite weapons inspector. It was in honor of the 100th episode of Ask the Inspector. So, like you said, this is the 39th episode of The Whiners. So for number 40, maybe I can expect something similar from you. Anyway, it's great. What are you drinking?
Well, in keeping in the theme, I also got a red wine from the Paso Robles Central Coast area. It's a $30 bottle of wine, and it's absolutely delicious. It's silky, and it's got some nice tannins, and it's getting better as the night goes on. I've only had about 2 sips, but it's been aerating and breathing for at least an hour. So I totally recommend it. And so does Wine Enthusiast. And if we had a sponsor, it would almost sound just like that.
It would. Silky. Ray, are you drinking anything silky this evening?
Yes, there is a little bit of vermouth in this Martinos. And if my wife says, okay, I'm going to have another, and that will be a martini.
Okay.
You got it, Ryan. Okay.
We'll go easy, Ray. We certainly appreciate you getting into the spirit of the show, because we know when you're with Judge Knapp, at least allegedly, you're sober. But
well, we know the secret. Ray let us in on it last time. How about you, Morgan?
The secret is we just encourage him to drink. That's the
Yeah.
Good old water for me. So
Okay.
I'm staying hydrated, and I'll keep you guys focused. So
That's okay. You'll provide the humor and sensibility.
exactly.
Ray, you're on fire on X. Your tweets are getting a lot of views. I highlighted the number of this one down there at the bottom. And some other people have a comparable theory out there. Morgan dug something up from somebody who went into a somewhat different direction, claiming that the U.S. is in on this scam because it's going to be expensive to decommission this boat and be a lot cheaper if it just blows up. But that wasn't part of your theory, was it, Ray?
No, it wasn't. No, no. When I heard that the Nimitz was going to leave the Asian waters and go back to where there's real trouble, that's the first thing that occurred to me. I mean, I've been in this business a long time. I know how the Israelis work. I know that sometimes they're encouraged by some people in Washington to do this precise thing. I know there are like 500, there are 5,000 people, 5,000 sailors on those ships.
Right.
But most of them can swim, right? And it's hard to sink an aircraft carrier. Kill a couple of USGI. Well, it's really done that before. Matter of fact, yeah, June 8th, 1967, the Israelis deliberately shot up the USS Liberty in international waters. It was collecting signals, as such NSA/Navy ships do, and the Israelis didn't like that. So they sent their aircraft, and then they sent 3 torpedo boats. They spread napalm all over that thing, and they did their very best to sink it with some almost 300 crew on it. Now, maybe I just finished the story. So, well, what happened? Well, there was this young Texan, right, Ryan?
Yay.
From Texas, yeah. His name was Terry Halberdier. He was 19. He goes to Captain McGonagall and he says, Captain, the Israelis has shut up all our radar except that one we couldn't get to work. Remember? I think I can get that to work. Captain McGonagall, right, yeah, you're going to go out there and what, you're going to swim through that napalm? That's what you could do? Sir, request permission. Permission granted. Haribardie went out there with some baling wire and what in the infantry we call a field expedient, right? Okay, he got that radar to work, got an SOS out, and the Israelis got the hell out of Dodge right away. Broke off the attacks. And then something awful happened. The commander of the 6th Fleet, well, actually, the commander of this section of the 6th Fleet, I think his name was Geiss, Admiral Geiss. He had sent aircraft from 2 of his aircraft carriers to do battle with whoever was attacking his ship, the USS Liberty. And as they neared the USS Liberty, he got a call from Secretary of Defense McNamara. McNamara said, you have to withdraw those aircraft. We don't. You bring back to the aircraft carrier. We don't want them to proceed any further. The attack is over. And to his credit, the guy says, "I'm sorry, that's my ship. Those are my sailors. I'm going to have to ask to speak to your supervisor." Well, it didn't take long because LBJ was right there next to McNamara. He got a phone. He said, "Now, Admiral Geiss, I just want to tell you, we don't want to embarrass our ally, Israel, so you do what you're ordered." He brought the planes back. So, what happened? Well, those sailors were told to cover it up. They were enjoined under pain of court-martial that if they so much as discussed what happened with each other, never mind with their wives or their friends, court-martial, okay? No one was held accountable. And long story short, the Israelis learned right then that they could get away with murder. Well, U.S. sailors murdered, 34 died, 171 or 2 were grievously injured. That's most of the crew, right? Mm-hmm. And Captain McGonagall, was shot, but he kept the ship going, and they limped back to, I think it was Malta, where the wounded, those survivors were taken to Greece, and that's where they were told, "You are not to say anything to anybody. We'll hopefully get you out of this hospital." But mum's the word, and to this day, they've kept. There's one exception which I could talk about later, but I'm probably taking.
I can talk about it a little bit because we've had Phil Turney, one of the survivors, on Ask the Inspector twice, and he is not staying quiet at all. And it's one of the most heartbreaking things I've ever heard. I mean, Scott and I were practically crying, as was the audience. This guy, you really feel his pain, and he's all these years later still trying to get official acknowledgement.
Yeah, when I heard that a very gutsy congressman, the first U.S. official to take some interest in this terrible incident, his name was Devin Nunes from the Central Valley of California. Terry Haribardie, for some reason, ended up settling there and working for Devin Nunes. And when Nunes heard about what happened, he was appalled, as every decent American should be. And he said, "I'm going to get you what you deserve." He couldn't get the Medal of Honor for him, but he got the Silver Star. I think that's the next one down.
Right.
And as soon as I heard that, I got on a plane and flew into San Jose, rented a car, got down to Visalia in the Central Valley of North Carolina, which is sort of where Devin Nunes had his headquarters. And I just made the award ceremony. It was, I tell you, when you know the Liberty survivors as I do, it's my pleasure, it's my honor to know them because I took an interest in them, right? They're in Nunes's office, and it's not a big deal. They have a couple of local newspaper people, but this is a gutsy thing for Nunes to do. No one else has done that. Now you can say, "Oh, well, there are no Jews in the Central Valley of California." Well, maybe not, but it's still a gutsy thing to do. All right. So the newspaper said, Terry, show us the shrapnel that's still in you. Shows him his shirt and he shows these, and get all the pictures and all. But most poignant was that I went out to lunch with these guys. There were 5 survivors together with Terry. And you want to know what PTSD is like? You talk to some of the Liberty survivors. You have, Jeff. But when you're not allowed to tell your wife, when the Navy that you served loyally turns on you and says, no, we're going to cover this up, that has a long-range effect. Now, Phil Turney and the others, they're pitching it in now and telling it like it is. It's possible to talk about this just because among other things, Admiral Maurer, who used to be Joint Chiefs of Staff, for God's sake, he did his own investigation and showed up the Navy and the U.S. government bought it for what it was. I have one other vignette because this is worth dwelling on. June 8th, 1967. If it were extraneous or if it weren't relevant to what I think might happen today, that would be another. Here's the rest of the story. In 2005, thereabouts, I had been asked to talk about why there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq and why there were no ties between Al-Qaeda and Saddam Hussein. Easy to prove, okay? I was asked to speak in a place called Springfield, Missouri, okay? Pretty decent city, okay? They had this big church hall, 300 people there, okay? So on the way down there, I got a copy of the article that Stephen Walt and John Mearsheimer wrote about the Israel lobby. Now, they were commissioned to write this by a very prominent magazine in our country. And when the editors of this magazine saw what the draft said, they, oh my God, well, thank you very much. We'll pay you what we can publish this. They went to the New York Review of Books. Oh, we get it. They went to the London Review of Books. Oh, we get it. So they published it on their own, right? Okay. So what did it say? Oh my God, it was great. Okay. I read it down on the plane going down. And so, long story short, I give this little talk and we start meandering around to other things. And in the Q&A, somebody says, well, have you read Mearsheimer and Walt's book on the Israel lobby? And I said, thank you, God. Of course, I just read it on the plane going down there. What's your question? Well, what did you think of it? I said, well, I thought it was great, but there's one glaring omission. And they said, what's that? It didn't mention the USS Liberty. And if you were out to prove the power of the Israel lobby, if you were out to show that the Israelis, because of that power, can get away with murder, well, how did they miss that, right? And then I looked at the audience, 300 people, right? And everybody's looking. So I said, well, how many of you know about the USS Liberty? Oh, there's one in the back, there's one in the middle, one up front. So I picked the one up front. I said, sir, tell me what you know about the USS Liberty. Ramrod straight he stood. Sergeant Bryce Lockwood, commander of the Marine contingent on the USS Liberty, sir. So I said, well, Mr. Lockwood, this is really very good fortune because you are firsthand. Maybe you could come up and explain what happened. Sir, I have not been able to do that, but I will try. I would like to try tonight. He comes up, I give him the microphone, and he explains what it was like for him. He was the commander of about 15, 20 Marines who were decrypting and, just listening to Israeli as well as Arab and Russian thing. Okay. So he said, I had taken this very sensitive technology, this machine that we all use, and I was about to drop it with this heavy bag into the Mediterranean. So I was right behind the bulwark when the torpedo from one of those 3 torpedo shots hit. And of course, I was knocked down, but not unconscious. I opened the bulwark, and there were 2 bodies still not having drifted out through the hole into the Mediterranean. And so I grabbed one of them, and they closed the hatch, for God's sake. I'm banging on the hatch, and finally they opened it. I said, "Oh," I finally got this guy up the hatch and got him free, and the other guy had already slipped out to sea. Okay, so I got up the hatch myself. Well, suffice it to say that when you hear those stories and you realize that your government covered that up, that your Navy, U.S. Navy, covered it up and wouldn't give these people justice. Well, you've heard from Phil Torney. He's really good about this. I've written a lot of articles on this as soon as I knew what had happened, again, because of its relevance today.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's not far-fetched, and that really proves it. And I was highlighting how many views it got, not just to make you feel like the superstar that you are, but because I think there's a good chance that if this was maybe going to happen, you have decreased the possibility of it happening by making so much noise about it. And
Isn't that the idea? Isn't that the idea to put that out there precisely to attack the potential?
Yeah, it was the idea, actually. I didn't know what to do. I heard, oh, here comes the Nimitz. Now, it's not just the Nimitz, of course. It could be any of those warships, or it could be anything, okay? But the Nimitz would be a sitting duck. These things are passé. They belong to the last century, for God's sake. Yeah, they take $16 billion to build each one. But they're sitting ducks. That's why the ones that are in the area are, staying about 300 miles offshore. They don't want to get hit. These missiles that hit ships are very, very accurate. So I thought to myself, well, and I looked up the guy's name. Okay, I know who he is, but I said the name's not going to do anything. What do we do in the military? Well, the most urgent message is a critic. Critic is when you're at war. Okay. Next one down is flash. Flash. You can't ignore a flash because it means something's really going to happen, really bad. So I put flash message to captain or commander, captain. Yeah, all caps for captain in the Navy of the Nimitz, USS Nimitz. And then I said, look, if you get hit, please try to figure out where the missile's coming from, all right? Don't take for granted what the neocons tell you. Oh, there go those Iranians again. Now they've killed U.S. personnel. Now we have to go in both feet. We'll tell the president right away. So, yeah, I think it's a real danger now. The more so since Trump is waffling, and thank God he's waffling, and he's going to have 2 weeks. Well, what would the Israelis do now to try to get the U.S. in with both feet?
Right.
That's
well, Ray. That's actually something I wanted to bring up with you on is exactly what could they do, and it's interesting because it's become a huge battle. You have Tucker Carlson and one of my senators. And I think it's very telling because
that's a good point to tie Tucker to Ray. I mean, these are the times we live in now. That's a source of optimism for me, is that compared to, like, say, the Iraq war scandal or any of these other ones from yesteryear, now there are people like Ray and Tucker Carlson who have real influence. This is,
and it's also important to tell the story of the history of what's been going on, because you have a lot of people who immediately say, like the senator, oh, well, my Bible says this, or, this is what's been going on. So I found this particular little clip from the standpoint of the history, Ray, and what could happen now. Very interesting from that debate.
Mossad share all of its intelligence with us?
Oh, probably not, but they share a lot. Really? We don't share all of our intelligence with them, but we share a lot. It's a close alliance.
Do they spy domestically in the United States?
Oh, they probably do, and we do as well. And friends and allies spy on each other. And I assume all of our allies spy on us.
And that's okay with you?
You know what? One of the things about being a conservative is that you're not naive and utopian. You don't think humans are all part of the reason socialism doesn't work is the mantra from each according to his abilities to each according to his needs doesn't work. As a conservative, I assume people act in their rational self-interest.
So it's conservative to pay people to spy on you?
It's conservative to recognize that human beings act in their own self-interest, and every one of our friends spies on us. And I'm not.
Do you like it? That's my question. I'm not asking whether they have motive to do it. Of course they do. I understand that, and by the way, I'm not mad at them. And you're an American lawmaker, so I just want to know. Hold on, I want to know your attitude. Yeah. You said that your guiding principle, in fact, the only principle, the only criterion.
I said guiding, the overwhelming. I wouldn't say only.
Is it in America's interest? Is it in America's interest for Israel to spy on us, including on the president?
It is in America's interest to be closely allied with Israel because we get huge benefits for it. And you want to see the clearest.
But I just want to stop on the spying for a second. That it takes place, as you know, and including on the president of the United States and several presidents. And I just want to know if that's okay and why is it okay? Wouldn't an American lawmaker say to a client state, you're not allowed to spy on us? I'm sorry. I know why you want to. I'm not mad at you, but you're not allowed to.
Sure.
And I don't care for it. I don't want to be spied on by you. It's kind of weird not to say that, but you don't seem able to say that.
I'm going to stop it right there, Ray, because you just said, what could happen. You've in that tweet of yours, you've said one thing in particular, but the other thing that is not known, and I do want to hear from you what other possibilities are, but one of the most damaging spies against America was Jonathan Pollard. And he basically opened the door to the destruction of the United States with all of the secrets over years and years and years that he directly sold. He did sell it. He made a lot of money off of it. He's now living, I guess, in Israel. But Ray, don't you think we need to keep talking about these, not because it's anti-Semitic or anything like that, but because it is actually what's in the interest of the nation, and in this case, now the world.
You mean, Ryan, the fact that we spy on each other, or
no, Israel? What Israel's doing, and this what Tucker pointed out there with the senator waffling all over the place. He's covering for what could be a worse crime, I think.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, you'll be surprised at my attitude to this, but yeah, there are Mossad spies all over Washington.
Yeah.
But Israel hardly needs them. I mean,
because of people like Senator Ted Cruz.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was the old wag that said, why was it that when we offered statehood to Israel, that they said, no, thanks. What was their rationale? Statehood in the United States of America, better than a mutual defense treaty. And the answer was, well, then we would only have 2 votes in the Senate. That's a joke, folks. That's a joke. A sick joke, okay? Now they have the majority of the Senate right in their pockets. So, yeah, we were enjoying, well, the instructions were not to spy on Israel, and James Jesus Angleton, back in the day, enforced that because he was pretty much in Israel's pocket, okay? When JFK wanted to prevent Israel from getting a nuclear weapon, atomic weapon at that time, James Angleton was there to prevent the Israelis from being enforced not to do this. That was the genesis of it. Now, you know what happened to John F. Kennedy? There are people that say this is one factor. I just don't know that. There's plenty of other factors, okay? But Israel has a nuclear weapon. So maybe we ought to, let's see. Oh, yeah, the other thing about your senator, and I'm not going to ask you if you voted for him or not, but yeah, Ted Cruz. All right. Now, the thing that was aired yesterday, the 1.5 minutes, it's classic.
You mean about the population of Iran?
Yeah. No. Does your
you have it? You have it. Should we play it?
Yeah. Oh, that would be very. I mean, this is priceless.
Yeah,
if you have it.
We have it.
Oh,
Here we
Take a
go.
sip, everybody. Sit back
Now
and
notice
enjoy.
the use of the plural for we. Okay, it's not
yes.
I or them. It's we. Okay?
Live in Iran, by the way. I don't.
Hold on. Let's make
Oh,
sure we have.
oh,
we
It
start
was
over.
there. It was there.
I know. But I was
You
wanting
got to
to just
listen
say,
real carefully from the very beginning.
yeah, and
All
also
right.
Trump has been using the word "we" too. So
Yeah.
All right. That's true.
all right, here we go.
Live in Iran, by the way. I don't know the population at all. No, I don't know the population. You don't know the population of the country you seek to topple?
How many people live in Iran?
92 million.
Okay. Yeah,
How could you not know that?
I don't sit around memorizing population tables.
Well, it's kind of relevant because you're calling for the overthrow of the government.
Why is it relevant whether it's,
because
it's 90 million or 80 million or 100 million? Why is
because
that
if
relevant?
you don't know anything about the country,
I didn't say I don't know anything about
okay, what's the ethnic mix of Iran?
They are Persians and
What percent?
predominantly Shia. Okay, this is
no,
cute.
it's not
Okay.
even. You don't know anything about Iran. So
Okay,
actually, the
I am not
country,
the Tucker Carlson
No, but
expert on Iran.
You're a
who
senator
says-
who's calling
Okay,
for the
you're one who
overthrow of the
claims-
government.
You're the
and
one
you
who
don't know
claims
anything about the country.
No, you don't know anything about the country. You're the one who claims they're not trying to murder Donald Trump.
No,
You're the
I'm
one
not saying that.
who can't figure out
I'm
if it was a
saying
good
you don't
idea to kill
believe-
General Soleimani, and you said it was bad.
believe they're trying to murder Trump.
Yes, I do.
Because you're not calling for military strikes against them in retaliation. And if you really
we're
believe that,
carrying out military strikes today.
you said Israel was.
Right, with our help. I said
Oops.
we. Israel is leading them, but
Oops.
we're supporting them.
Well, you're breaking news here because the U.S. government last night denied, the National Security Council spokesman Alex Pfeiffer denied on behalf of Trump that we were acting on Israel's behalf in any offensive
No,
capacity.
we're not
at all.
bombing them. Israel's bombing them.
You just said we were.
We are supporting
This is high
Israel. as their-
stakes. You're a senator. If you're saying the United States government is at war
we're-
with Iran right now, people are listening.
Okay.
Remind me not to consent to an interview with Tucker Carlson.
He's good at what he does. That was really good. I think there were multiple parts in the interview where it was like gotchas. I think
Yeah.
one.
Well, he's got his talking points where he's got to say a certain thing, and Tucker just simply says, "Well, let's just go with the truth."
Well, I think what Morgan is about to say is, what's with this we, white man?
Yeah, Morgan, don't be shy about jumping in. I know all three of us are very loquacious, so we want to make sure that
Hey, I've been
we hear
called a
from
lot
you
of things.
too.
What does that mean? Loquacious.
This was tonight, right before the show. Speaking of the ethnic makeup of Iran, Fox News had a whole thing about regime change and what are the possibilities. And so they were talking about the ethnic and religious makeup. So, you know, they're trying. What I'm saying is that everything. And Morgan, you should definitely say something about this. It seems like all the language is to get people familiar with the idea that we're just going to have to, you know, take it to the next level on something.
I mean, it's the crazy parallels of the same playbook that was used in Iraq that really gets me. You know, first it was these weapons of mass destruction, and now we have come out with I think Tom Cotton's the one who's really pushing this agenda of regime change. Even our senator Tom Tillis came out, and I think it was a CNN thing where he just proudly boasted and calling for a regime change in Iran, even though I don't understand what they don't know what that means, given what we had to go through with, you know, we just got out of Afghanistan and in Iraq, you had, you know, some of the worst atrocities, you know, with the Abu Ghraib and just the aspects of torture, and 90% of those men were completely innocent, and that's what it takes to really take down a government. And these people are just so flagrantly just calling for overthrow of entire government. Again, it's outrageous.
Yeah, it's also surreal. Here's Trump. Iran must not have a nuclear weapon. Here's everybody else. We must prevent Iran from having a nuclear weapon. Okay. Now, maybe the best commentary on this was my friend Larry Johnson. We were on Judge Neapolitano's show together, and he says, Ray, you must not buy a Maserati. I said, what? He says, we're going to prevent you from buying a Maserati. You may not have a Maserati. Now, that's ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, McGovern doesn't have the money, but he doesn't have the wish to have whatever hell a Maserati is, right? I think I know. So they're pushing on an open door. And it's not just me saying that. It's the director of national intelligence every year since 2007, for God's sake. Okay. Oh, good. Hey, it pays to do these little tweets.
Yeah, it does. Look at that.
Only 98,000 views on this one, Ray. I don't know what's wrong with you.
Yeah, I don't know. This is kind of unusual for me, but here's Tulsi.
You're on fire. So you called for her to resign, and I kind of have mixed feelings about this. I know why you're doing it, but on the other hand, I want Tulsi to stay in the administration because there aren't that many good ones. So it's a couple of days later now. Do you still think she should resign?
Well, I had mixed emotions in the beginning, okay? Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you why. There's a potent argument, and I'm sure you can give it, as to why she should stay around and be a sane voice, relatively,
and fight for the truth. That's been my view also.
Yeah. So, but the other side of it is this: the CIA was set up to tell the president the unvarnished truth. What Truman said was it has to be untreated intelligence. Okay. Now we know what happened before Iraq. My former colleagues were corrupted into making up lies to justify a war of aggression defined by Nuremberg as the most awful war because it contains within itself the accumulated evil of the whole of a war of aggression. What does that mean? Torture. Morgan mentioned torture, all this stuff. Okay. So they did that. And I said, my God, what's going to happen to these guys when it's shown that there were no weapons of mass destruction or no ties? Colin Powell saying there was a sinister nexus between Saddam Hussein and Al Qaeda. It was BS, complete BS. Okay, so what's going to happen to them? What happened to them? Nothing. Colin Powell, a couple of years later, said, he was asked, "Are you sorry about that?" He says, "Well, it was a blot on my career." And McGovern went, "The blot on his career." Anyhow, so not only do we have the intelligence community as a whole, okay. In 2007, it was 16 intelligence agencies that said that thing that you just showed. Iran had stopped working on a nuclear weapon in 2003, okay, with high confidence and unanimously every year since. The intelligence community came through with that same judgment, including March of this year, okay?
Right.
So
now, if I can interrupt just for a second,
Yeah.
We have a very sophisticated audience, but just in case there are a few people watching who don't know, we maybe could do a little better job setting this up. Tulsi Gabbard said in March, as you just said, that they are not close, right?
Yeah.
And, okay. And then
But
the
she
other
said
day,
others.
the other day, a reporter asked Trump about that, and here's what he said when asked.
Thanks.
Close do you personally think that they were to getting one? Because Tulsi Gabbard testified in March that the intelligence community said Iran wasn't building a nuclear weapon.
I don't care what she said. I think they were very close to having.
I don't care what she said. That's what Ray was reacting to.
And that's why I wrote that tweet. I don't care what she said. Well, since Iraq, I've debating with myself, should the CIA be abolished? And up till now, I have said, well, that's throwing the baby out with the bathwater. In 2007, that national intelligence estimate played a huge role in preventing Bush and Cheney and Condoleezza Rice from beginning a war together with Israel on Iran. Bush himself said in his memoir, this is a quote, okay? "How could I justify an attack on the nuclear facilities of a country that the intelligence community says has no active nuclear weapons program, end quote. Bummer. He didn't say the bummer, but there is. He must have written those pages himself, and it's called Decision Points. Don't buy it. Decision Points. Look it up. It's in some libraries. Now, what am I saying? I'm saying not only this, but also this guy William Burns, who was the CIA director under Biden, and told Biden 2 years ago, not to worry, not to worry. Putin has already lost in Ukraine. His armed forces have been held up to ridicule in front of the whole world. And Biden said the same thing 10 days later, okay? So here's a guy who was really, I don't know, he's a diplomat. I learned later, I was wondering who told him that. Well, he had just been in Kiev. And he talked to Zelensky. And I'm sure Zelensky said, oh, we got it made. Our intelligence people said, look, Putin's already lost. So when you see the president, please tell him, where else would Burns have gone? Anyhow, so he says that. Now, on his way out in October of this past year before the election, I guess he had a qualm of conscience. And he said to the press, look, we stand by our judgment made with total confidence that Iran's not working on a nuclear weapon. And let me tell you this, if they start working on a nuclear weapon, we have it so wired that we will learn very, very quickly and we'll be able to stop it, okay? Whoa! So not only are they not working on a nuclear weapon, but we have assurances now, and it makes sense. They have cameras all over those damn things, even deep in those mountains, and they have the satellites, which I happen to know. I mean, it's not just photos, guys. It's radar, it's infrared,
Video.
It's multi-spectrus.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, the whole thing is a ruse, and it goes back to the fact that this has nothing to do with a nuclear weapon in Iran's hands. It has to do with regime change. Who wants regime change? Benjamin Netanyahu. Who is doing his bidding? Whoa. Maybe this is the thing that I need to end on. People say, oh, Trump is so terrible. He participated in this subterfuge to give Iran a false sense of security, that these negotiations were going to go somewhere, and then he has told Netanyahu not to do this, and the day before, and all this stuff. Well, no, it wasn't that. In my view, it's very clear that Trump told Netanyahu, please don't do that. And he did it anyway. But as he did it, the people in on this, like our military and our intelligence people, said, hey, Mr. President, come down to the Situation Room. We'll show you what's going to happen tonight. Exactly a week ago. Seems like an age ago, doesn't it? Last Thursday, okay? So they go down, and all of a sudden, the attack starts. And what happens? Israel has complete dominance over the air defense systems because these clever Israelis and the U.S. probably figured out a way to jigger it so that they would work, okay? And Trump looks at this, oh my God, look at that. Oh, so he gets up the next morning, he says, excellent. He thinks Israel's going to win, right? Excellent. We support Israel. I know everything, he says. Direct quote. Well, then later it became clear that, those clever Iranians, they know how to fix these things, and they got them up in 8 hours, and now they're shooting up the airfields and other places in Israel. So Trump changes his tune and said, well, we didn't really know about it. And besides, well, what? And the latest thing, 2 weeks, give me 2 more weeks. And then, so, this is so much like Trump. He has no convictions, no sense of honesty. He's going to go where he thinks the winner is. He thought the winner on Friday morning was Israel. Now he knows that the Israelis cannot sustain this thing. The winner is going to be Iran. The Russians and the Chinese have come in and told Trump which end is up. And I'm more hopeful now that he said, well, in 2 weeks we'll take a look at it. Well,
Well, some of your colleagues are saying it's inevitable that the U.S. is going to get militarily involved directly, not just supporting
who is
Israel.
saying?
Well, some of your colleagues, Scott Ritter,
Oh,
for example,
yeah,
I think Jeffrey, what's Jeffrey Sachs?
Jeffrey Sachs. Well, that's
Yeah,
why I
but-
also showed this article from
Doug-
Axios, Ray,
McGregor too. I
because
think Douglas McGregor.
that's
Now,
right.
I'm not saying
that's
you're
right.
wrong. I'm just pointing that out. So, what is your position? Do you think it's inevitable or not?
Well, it's not. I mean, look, my colleagues, I have the benefit of one thing, okay? And that is that 3 hours ago, the White House said, no, we're not going to do it. I'm going to think about it for 2 weeks. So it's not that that McGovern is a brain surgeon or anything. I
Yeah.
mean, you stay up with the latest. Now, it did look bad. I was not prepared to say that wouldn't happen, although I didn't think it would happen. And bear in mind, these people are crackerjack analysts, but they look at things from a military perspective, my God. And to their credit, they look at capabilities.
Well, the other
as
thing is that Trump, whether you like him or don't like him, or you're somewhere in between, the guy is a rare bird. He's not easy to figure out, and these guys are not accustomed to figuring out people like Trump. Don't you think that's part of it?
Well,
too?
yeah, there's a danger in overanalyzing things. Morgan, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no, you're fine. I was just going to add he changes.
Yeah.
He's very hard to control or
Yeah.
foresee or I
Yeah,
think
is he bluffing? You
can't
or
almost
not?
say what
Is it a
he could be.
negotiating thing?
You
Yeah.
can't almost take a judgment on what he's going to say. in
And
a
I think
certain
that
sense.
is one of his negotiating tactics: is that to intentionally blur the line and keep people guessing. I mean, I think
Well,
that's what he
that gives him too much credit.
did. You think so?
The guy is a weird apple, He'll say
Yeah.
one thing, the Russians warned against this. You remember when Putin was asked 2 years ago who Russia would prefer to become president? And he said,
Yeah.
Biden, because he's predictable.
Yeah.
And then his tongue was way up in his cheek. And then when Biden ducked out, somebody says, well, who now? He says, well, what's her name?
Kamala.
Harris,
Mhm.
of course, because she's predictable. Well, that was half tongue in, maybe all tongue in cheek. But put yourself in the position of a leader in Russia, the Kremlin leader. What is the thing that you would treasure most in your opposite number in Washington? It's predictability. I've been through like 6 decades of watching this stuff. And if you don't have a predictable person in that other place, then you have to do everything you can to persuade him that this is not really in your good interest. And I think that's what just happened the last couple of days. Putin has probably been talking to him directly, which is good news, okay? The Chinese as well. And they said, look, Mr. President, you may have been misled to believe that Israel is going to prevail here before, and this is the overarching scenario here, before Netanyahu gets back to the kind of corner where he will choose to use nuclear weapons. My God, we got to stop this thing.
Well, Ray, there was a debate here where supposedly, and so maybe you can shed some light in the direction you're going, where talking about the 30,000-pound bomb, the bunker buster that was made specifically for taking out Iran's facility, and then apparently it takes 6 of them because they're not even sure it will work the first time, and then Netanyahu says, well, then if the United States can't do it, we'll do it. So, and they were talking maybe with Mossad or I don't even know what. So again, is this also Trump himself saying, well, nobody can give me 100% guarantee, so I'm not going to commit myself to it if I can't get the guarantee, or what?
That could be, Fordow, the place where they have most of the centrifuges and stuff. I'm told reliably that that's 1/2 mile into the bottom of a mountain, for God's sake, underground. Now, I listen to the experts because I don't know these things. And they say, well, maybe we could block the entrance to it and maybe suffocate everybody there, or, that's not going to happen. Maybe we can use the 300,000 bomb or the mother of all bombs or whatever
Right,
it is.
right.
That's not going to do it either if it's a half mile underneath. And then what's going to happen in retaliation? You're going to lose a lot of U.S. service people in the immediate vicinity.
That depends on who the we is. What about Israelis putting boots on the ground?
What I'm saying is the Israelis would very much like that to happen, because then Trump would be really
committed.
It would be really hard for him to avoid coming with both feet, which is what they want him to do, and which more sane voices are saying, wait a second, Mr. Trump, do you really know what's going on here? You were deceived during that first air show on Thursday night. It's different now. And the Russians, the Russians are working with the Iranians. They've been talking so has Witkoff been talking to the Iranians. So there are open lines, and the ways out of this, short of giving Bibi Benjamin Netanyahu, everything he wants.
Well, somebody was asking why. I guess what they meant was, why is it good for from Putin's perspective for the U.S. president to be predictable? Before you answer that, Ray, I'm going to take a shot at it and say we don't know that Putin was being serious. He could have been being mischievous when he said that. What do you think?
Well, what he was trying to do in his own way was to say, look, predictability is the coin of the realm, for God's sake. Mm-hmm. We can destroy the world, not only each other. And so the first time around, when Trump was running for office, 2016, far from the legend that was propounded by the mainstream media that the Russians were rooting for Trump, I never saw any evidence that that was the case. And the reason was that the Russians would never want somebody so mercurial, so emotional, so unpredictable in that office. So people have been accustomed to thinking, well, the Russians do like Trump. Well, they always were worried about this. Now they're doubly worried. But the new situation is there's contact. What happened after those Iranian drones hit those airfields deep inside Russia? The first thing happened was that Putin said, Sergei Lavrov, you call Rubio right away and find out what the hell's going on. Well, he does. Rubio's right there, okay? It's not like with Blinken, where Blinken's teenage daughter is on the phone for a half an hour and then, the Lavrov can't get through. I make a joke, of course, but that's pretty much what it was. So he gets through and he says, okay, Rubio, did you know about this thing? And Rubio now beats the hell out of me. And nobody told me. Okay. How about the president? I don't know about the president, but I doubt he would have told me for sure. Okay. All right. Thanks. Vladimir, this is what they tell me. Okay. Vladimir, get me Trump on the phone. That's exactly how it went down. He gets Trump on the phone and he says, look, this is really bad news. Did you know about this? And if you knew about this, you condone this sort of thing? And I'm sure Trump said, well, they never told me about it. And is that credible? It is credible. There's something called plausible deniability. Mm-hmm. Secret services, CIA, FBI, they use it all the time. Presidents shouldn't know certain things because it'd be very embarrassing if people found out that they did, Bay of Pigs, that kind of thing, all right? So, yeah. So in my view, Trump really was sort of mousetrapped by our intelligence services as well as by Bibi Netanyahu. Perhaps they cooperated together, these two entities, but it didn't serve any of his purposes. And now he's been dealing with that. First, he thought, well, all right, I'll go with the flow here. And now he realizes, no, long term, Iran's going to win this damn thing. They have hypersonic missiles that cannot be defeated by by Patriot missiles, by all these other kinds of very sophisticated missiles that we've given to Israel. And why is it, for God's sake, why is it that we don't have hypersonic missiles? I mean, I think it's a good thing, because if we did, we'd be tempted to give them to Israel. But if we have hypersonic missiles, which are now, I mean, the Israelis are not being candid about all the damage that's happening in Israel right now, today, okay? Let's hope that somebody enterprising has got an iPhone or something, gets good pictures of what's really happening inside Israel. And I think if Netanyahu is finally persuaded that Trump is not going to jump in with 2 feet, and he might come to his senses. Otherwise, he might be tempted in extremis to use the Samson option and pull down not only the Middle East, but the whole world upon himself.
Right there, you have most Americans think that the U.S. military shouldn't get involved. Even among Republicans, 53%. You have a lot of people that aren't sure, but it is most of Americans. So even though the polls, CNN's been putting out polls that most Americans don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon, I think you've already established it from William Burns and others, yourself, many experts who have said that they were not close. They don't have that. One question I have, Ray, is it seems like somewhere in here, and I don't know how else to put it, so I'll put it this way, Iran maybe miscalculated or led people to believe that they were becoming a threshold power, nuclear power, or something like that. And supposedly what Israel did is took the occasion then to act. Is that's true?
Good? It's good thinking. I don't think it's true. What you have is 2 separate processes. One is to build a nuclear weapon. The other is to enrich uranium. Now, I learned something by listening to one of the Iranian people being interviewed on what Dialogue Works, okay? He was a professor. Mirandi is his name. Mm-hmm. And he explained, look, we don't need to enrich uranium to the purity that we have been doing. Okay? We do that so that we have a card to play. We do that so that there's something that we can trade for concessions on the other side. Was it 2% or 2.3% is enough to power our X-ray reaction, all that kind of stuff. So we're above where we need to be, but let's deal, for God's sake, and we'll go back down where we don't need to be. Okay, so that was the first time it made sense to me is why the Iranian under the treaty and under all things they're entitled to do that. Okay, but why they enrich it to that? Now the solution, the Russians already proposed a solution. The solution is, look, we Russia, we'll take that highly enriched uranium, and we'll keep it safe, and we won't give it back to. We'll cross my heart, hope to die. We won't give it back to the Iranians because why would we? And so, problem solved. Well, not really, because it's not about uranium. It's not about a nuclear weapon. It's about regime change. Okay, and once people realize that, then everything fits together.
All right. Well, we set aside an hour for this talk, but if you do have a few more minutes, Ray, I know Morgan had a few questions she wanted to get in. Are you okay? Do you have a few more minutes?
For Morgan, I would drink 2 martinis. Maybe I'll become more lucid. Thank you, Morgan.
No, I wanted to draw attention to the connection that I saw with this attack Israel did on Iran with the Operation Spiderweb in Ukraine and Russia. What struck me is that with the attack on Russia, it was a day before the peace talks.
Right.
And then with this situation in Iran, you had 2 days before the U.S. was supposed to meet to continue these talks for, on enriched uranium. So I just wanted to get you to comment on this, this kind of copy and paste playbook that either you kind of alluded that is they're not allowing the president to know? Is it, do you find that it's also other intelligence agencies that are engaged in this, and more than just the CIA or
Yeah.
Mossad?
Well, you have, what do you have? About 18 agencies now, and you have the Pentagon. So you have all kinds of people that mess around and have special relationships with the Israelis. Now, what you point out is really good. I know where you could get a job as an analyst, but I wouldn't recommend it right now. The timing is just exquisite. As you point out, the Iranian drones against those bomber fields, and the
Ukrainian drones.
That's right. Ukrainian
Yeah.
drone. Ukrainian uranium. Yeah,
Ukrainian uranium.
Yeah, you get to be my age, you're lucky to be lucid. Anyhow, what I'm saying here is I think the lesson that I take from this is that the Israelis and the Ukrainians are very close, and they've been sharing this stuff. I mean, as you point out, Morgan, this is sort of a carbon copy of what happened deep inside Russia. And to the extent of having these trailers or whatever they were getting inside your Iran as well as inside Ukraine. So that's the more pernicious thing, that the modus operandi and many of the earmarks of this initial attack against the Russian airfields by the Iranians was sort of replicated in this most recent thing. So I think you're really right to point that out, but I would just add that there's an extra implication of how close the Ukrainians and Mossad have been and continue to be, and that's something that people ought to understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I found that very interesting, as well as we had brushed on Tulsi as well, but I found it very interesting that her video, Ryan sent me the video that she did on Hiroshima. The most appalling part was the last, I believe, minute and a half of it, where she was basically saying that there are warmongers that want to stoke nuclear tensions, and they find that they will be saved, and essentially calling on the American people to do something. I found that very appalling as someone who was the acting DNI, to basically make this appeal to the American people that I'm doing all I can, but you also need to step up in the fact and take these steps to make it known that you think this is absolutely insane. So I wanted to get your comment on that as well, because, I find that very appalling. And then with, how Trump has kind of disregarded her comments on Iran, especially after this statement that she made on June 10th, it draws a very different picture of who he's listening to, versus what she wants to get across to the American people. So if you could comment on that.
Yeah, well, again, you've hit the nail on the head. People say this was a highly unusual video that Tulsi Gabbard did. It wasn't highly original. It was unique. I've never seen a director of national intelligence make this kind of statement to the whole world.
It shocked me when I saw
and
that.
There are rumors that Trump was pissed off about it.
Yeah. So what she's saying is there are warmongers that I have to deal with every day here. And my God, you Americans need to know this. And when I go to Japan, remember, for God's sake, what happened one time, And so that was really unusual. Now, would Trump be pissed off at that? Only if he was told to be pissed off. And you have all kinds of neocons say, my God, oh, she's stepping out of her role, which she was. I mean, I don't think it's a good idea for a director of national intelligence to do that, but this I make exceptions. I mean, these were extreme circumstances. She wanted to warn the world. She could just be silent, but she had the gutsy thing. What else about Tulsi Gabbard? She's taken on the deep state. She said publicly, James Comey should be in jail.
That's right.
John Brennan should be in jail. And they should, because she's got the book on them. And so does Kash Patel. And so does Trump if he wants to use it. Okay. Now, the fact that they're not in jail, and I regretfully say that they're not likely to go to jail because they deserve every day in jail that they could get, is because the deep state is so powerful still. So on that note, I'd say that Tulsi was really confronting the deep state. As a matter of fact, her spokesperson just 2 days ago talked about the web of lies that the deep state weaves and said, don't fall for it. Don't fall for it again. So I don't know how long Tulsi's going to be hanging around. I still am ambivalent, like Jeff. And,
Well, the thing is, Trump is not in the apology business, as we all know. But the vice president did issue a statement in support of Tulsi. I would like Trump to say something too, and then maybe it wouldn't leave her in this position of having been humiliated. I'm not so sure he intended to humiliate her because, he does blurt things out. But since he did, in fact, blurt things out, I'd like to see him say something that shows a little respect.
I would too. He's not going to do that, as you say. And the question is, should Tulsi hang on? I'm ambivalent on that. I think as a matter of honor, as a demonstration to the analysts who told the truth since 2007, and were faithful to the truth under great pressure from the neocons. I know what that pressure is like, okay? That she just, I think, still on balance, I said she should say, look, this is ridiculous. Iran is not working on a nuclear weapon. We know that. If they started, we'd know immediately. Forget about it, folks. I'm out of here. But realize that this is about regime change. You want to do another regime change? How many people live in Iran? 92 million. Start there, folks. The Iranians are not going to lose this one. Take that into account. So, if I feel a little bit emotional about this, well, I confess to being guilty of what Dmitry Peskov, Putin's spokesperson, called emotional overload. I mean, if you're not emotionally overloaded about what's going on here, you're just not paying attention.
And she had already talked about regime change even in the hearings, the Timber Sycamore operation, and so in Syria. So she is keeping to what she said she was going to do. So far, it's what I see. So yeah, it's a difficult question.
All right. So the best place for people to stay up on your views, Ray, I think would be X, and your handle there is @RayMcGovern. That makes it easy to remember.
Yeah, I can even remember that myself. And on my, we have a website. My son populates that, and he usually gets everything that I put up on X and other things of interest on RayMcGovern.com. That's my website. I'm also on Facebook. Was that?
That's easy.
Too. Yeah. So, and I'm all over YouTube these days. So, you may get it.
And then let's not forget, I don't think there's any website or anything, but Veteran Intelligent Professionals for Sanity. There's a fine collection of humans who issue statements and papers from time to time, right?
That's right. And our entire production line is available at consortiumnews.com. There's a little button on the top, VIPS, Veteran Intelligence Professionals for Sanity memos. And so you click on there and you'll see the latest at the top, and way down to when we told Bush that Colin Powell was lying through his teeth. And we told him that the afternoon that Colin Powell lied through his teeth.
All right. Well, thanks for spending some time with us tonight, Ray, and even giving us a little extra time. We appreciate it very much. This is your second appearance on the Whiners.
Thank you, Ray.
Well, you're most welcome. Well, thank you, Morgan. And before we leave, let's have a little toast to peace, huh?
Peace. There you go.
Juneteenth, and peace in general.
Mhm.
And we'll be back next Thursday night at the usual time, 7 p.m. Please join us tomorrow night as well at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for Ask the Inspector with Scott Ritter. Take care, everybody.
Bye.